my name's Owen. I used to work at the Next Web, and I'm now a front-end developer. I'm here today joined by Kees, is that right? Kees Koolen.
Yes, how you say it, yes.
He's been in many, many different companies that you might have heard of. A very large one here in Amsterdam called Booking.com. He's the man behind that. He also was, at one point, the COO of Uber, and a number of other things. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and, I guess, your history? It seems like you've been everywhere. Meanwhile, I'm watching TV.
Yeah, so my biggest problem is that I like too many things. So it's always difficult to focus. But once you get into a company, you really have to focus to make it big. So, but then when I'm focusing, I'm looking around like there's so much more nice things. So sometimes I see other companies and then I jump from one company to the other one. At Booking, I stayed 14 years, so that's not really jumping quickly. It's some time. It was very small when I started. It was quite big when I left. But it's very nice to take something small and to make it very big.
Right. So you ran Booking.com for 14 years. And how small was it when you started, and what did you grow it to? It was pretty sizable.
So when I started operationally working, I was an angel investor in '96. I started working with it in 2001 when it was a little bit more than $1 million of turnover. And when I left as a CEO in that year, we did 23 billion in GMV, so in hotel bookings.
Wow, that's pretty big.
That's quite big.
So you found yourself at Uber next. What did you do there? You were in charge of the global expansion, I think?
No, I was not really working at Uber. That was the plan, but It didn't work out because then I had to move to the US, and I'm Dutch, and I like the Netherlands, and I want to stay here because in Europe we can build nice companies.
Right.
So I was in 2010 and 2011, I was traveling in the valley to see what's next after Booking, because I more or less knew that I would leave Booking. And then I met a guy called Travis, and we spoke, I think, for 2 weeks straight about his great idea, that he was really disrupting a sector. And I said, you know, I want to help you, and that's how we got into contact. And that's how I started helping him in 2012 and 2013 to prepare his international launch.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, so you've really done everything. So that Booking.com's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people would do. I think a lot of Dutch companies tend to start here and they're like, oh, this is great, and then they tend to end up going to the US to found their companies. So what's so attractive about the Dutch market or the European market for building a company? Why would you do it here as opposed to there?
I think in Europe, first to start with, it's a bigger market than the US. You know, we are 1/4 of the global economy, and the US is only 20%, so we are bigger than the US.
Right.
And I think the big advantage you have, if you succeed here, you are able to work in many countries with many languages, with many cultures. And then if you are successful in Europe, you can go global quite easily because you're already used to do different things in different places.
Right.
And when you are Dutch, for example, our country is this big in the global economy, so if you want to build a good company, you have to start going abroad from the beginning. So we are global by default.
Right. But Europe, I guess, I'm from overseas, so I'm from New Zealand where everything seems particularly easy, and so here there seems to be a lot of rules and regulations. That seems like a real challenge. You've been involved in companies like Uber and Booking, which have sizable issues with regulations in general. It seems like starting a company here, you have to fight against, all these different data protection rules. Uber, for example, is crazy because you've got the taxis, and Booking, you've got the whole hotel industry. How do you tackle that? There's so many issues and regulations that it seems like, oh, I don't want to start this business. It's too hard. You know, how do you view approaching regulation? Do you follow the letter of the law, or do you work with it to find a gray area?
I think if you want to build something big, it's more about, can you find an audience, can you find the consumers that want something? And if consumers want something and you can provide that service and you can give them what they want, you know that you're onto something very big. But if you are onto something big, normally that's because people had a pain that things were not working well. You know, in case of Booking, you had to take a day off to go to the travel agency to book your hotel, and when you arrived there, it was very different from what you wanted. So you want to see it before. So it was a pain from a consumer that they wanted to do. The same with Uber. If you go into a taxi, you have the risk. You know, most taxis are fine, but you have the risk that you enter into a taxi where you don't like the service at all. So Uber addressed all the pain points and went back to the bottom to address these pains and to rebuild a product that serves all your pains. But if you are onto something that's really disruptive, that means that you're doing something that did not exist before. And for me, it's quite simple. If it did not exist before, it's not regulated. There are no laws. So by default, it means you are maybe not within the law. You're not even violating the law, but for what you are going to do, there is no law.
Right.
But if you are going to look at that law and say, oh, I can't do it, I think that's a pity for you, because then your company won't be big. So if you're onto something disruptive, it's going to be big. and the consumer wants it, most likely you enter into problems with some laws.
Right.
But that's not something to stop you.
Yeah. So do you, when you're approaching something like that, I mean, Uber from the start probably expected some legal issues, right? How do you approach that? Do you just do it and see what happens? Or is it kind of like, I actually have no idea. Do you just go out there and start getting people to drive cars? Or do you talk to the government first? Does it kind of surprise them with it or ease them into the idea?
Yeah, so you're doing something that's really new, that's disruptive, that people want. And on the other side, it's not within the law. So you know that you will enter some roadblock somewhere. So I think what you should do as fast as possible is to get into contact with your government or with the regulators or, like in our case, some cases with the European Union. And you have to start educating those people and to point them at what you're doing. And what I think most of our companies do is that we do this too late. We wait too long until we go to the governments, we go to the regulators, and then we enter into those big roadblocks like Microsoft had in '99 with the antitrust committee, like Google had in Europe, like Uber has sometimes, and we at Booking had it too. I think all the big companies have more or less sometimes the same issues. And I think it also goes back to communication, which is very difficult if you're a founder entrepreneur, because if you want to build a big company, you dive deep and you focus and you only look at the thing you're doing and you forget about the world.
Yep.
But it is important, I think, to think about that world and to start talking with those people.
Right.
And that's what I also try to help now with young people who start their companies, like, okay, what's happening here, what's different? We should talk to the governors.
Right. I was really impressed just now. The light followed you. Really,
yeah.
It's quite a fancy. We're really wired up with this thing.
It's very nice.
I feel like a cyborg. So you gave me a great example earlier about how there's a self-driving car revolution, and I think there's quite a few startups out there kind of looking into that. A car. If we can wire up every car to be a self-driving car, eventually there's going to be a point where there's like a mathematical equation, and it's like it's going to decide if you or me is more important to die, I guess, in an accident. So how do they have to approach that in terms of regulation? Should they be building that right now in parallel with the government, or because I assume Google's already doing it, right? So would you get them involved in that early on? Because I mean, it's a sizable thing, right? Like murder. How do you decide the redefinition of murder with the government?
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult one. I like self-driving cars a lot. It's a pity that I cannot use one because it's not allowed.
Not yet.
But I would love to be in a car and just do my work, and when I'm there, I can go to where I have to be, and I don't have to drive. Self-driving cars are very far. I think it's close to be adopted. There's a huge amount of people that have used the experience who want to use it, but it's not regulated yet, and maybe we do some small tests. But the biggest problem with self-driving cars is a very stupid problem. Because we know that if you're going to self-driving cars, maybe 80%, 90%, 95% less casualties will happen. Because the self-driving car always pays attention. It doesn't watch the phone, and it says, whoa, I'm wrong here.
Right.
But what's the big difference why the regulation is so difficult? Because if you are driving yourself, you make a mistake, and that's called an accident. If somebody dies, it's bad luck. It's not what we want, but it happens sometimes. So we're all used to that, and that's how the world looks at it. There's casualties, and we have to reduce the amount of casualties. But at once, if it's a self-driving car, then there is a computer. And the computer knows at a certain moment, I'm in a situation where for sure something's going terribly wrong now. And the computer has to choose. I'm going to take this child, I'm going to take this old person, and the driver has to die. Maybe I drive into that building, and something will happen, and the computer has to choose. A computer cannot do much himself. So the computer is programmed by somebody. So where you go back from the legal perspective is that you go back to the programmer. What choice did he make? What did he think was important? That to let the child live, to let the elderly person live, to save the driver? So that once you're in a situation where no government really has a solution.
Right.
But I think, going there, we all know we are going there. I think governments should really look at this much more carefully, make like a think tank, make some sandboxes where they can say, in this area you can use it and see what's happening and how we deal with it. Because in the end it will happen, and the problem that they are not regulating it is only getting bigger.
Right.
And there will be a moment that people are violating that law because the consumer desire to use it gets so big.
Right. So can any company, any size of company approach the government though? Like it seems like when you're a really small guy trying to grow your company to something big, how can you get involved with government like that? It seems almost like, I guess I see it like you go up against regulation as a challenge from your Uber and Booking.com background. But how do you start that at square one? Because whenever I think like, I'm not going to start a self-driving car company, but if I was, I would be like, I wouldn't know where to start, right? I would build it, and then I wouldn't know who to talk to. Can any company start talking with the government?
Yes and no. Of course, not everybody can talk to the government, but my experience is that if you're talking about a serious issue and you're not only complaining,
Right.
and you have like, I have an issue and I think this is going to solve something in this world and this is important for everybody, but you guys have to think about it too. And you do that quite structured and you start approaching them, they are very open to talk to
Right.
you and to listen to you. And of course, it's difficult for somebody in the government to say something in public what he or she is going to do at that moment, because if they don't know, they cannot really answer it.
Right.
But to open the conversation, I experienced, and I did not expect that many years ago, but I experienced it's quite easy. If it's about a real subject, it's about a real something for the future, it is possible to talk to those people, to
Right.
sit with them on the table, to discuss it. But you should not only mention problems to them or complaining about
Right.
this is stupid, this doesn't work, and we're going nowhere. That's not how you do it. You know, it's more like I see clearly this development in our world, and I clearly see some roadblocks going on, and I think we should sit together and solve these kind of issues.
Right.
And then they spend really time on it.
So to get the government's attention, you should just say, I'm building a killer car, and then they'll start listening to you, something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Initially they won't listen, but in the end, if you explain why it's important, they will listen and they will talk to you.
So I guess what you're saying is regulation doesn't scare you off. It seems like it's a bit of a challenge for yourself, right?
I think it's just part of your building your business. It's,
Right.
it's one of the many things you have to do. So I think if you are only looking at regulation that things are not possible, it means you can't do anything.
Right, right.
And so you should not on purpose violate the law, but if you're really disruptive, you know that you are not in the law and there is no law.
Right.
And the law will be, there will be a law there, you know, because that's how this world works.
So the size of the regulation, do you think that's proportional to how big the opportunity is? Do you think that if it's a really major thing, like the whole taxi cab industry, you can't drive your own car as a cab, is that?
No, I don't think there's much correlation.
Right, right, no, I don't know.
You can have good luck and bad luck that you're in a not over-regulated sector.
So how do you scale a big bet like Uber or Booking.com? What's the most important part of taking a company from zero to huge? And like I was going to say overnight, but
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway, I guess, from that?
I think once you have your product and you know that you're in the right timing and the consumer wants it, and then you can scale that company big, it's only about building your team.
Right.
Because in the end, if you have the ID, even if it's the best ID, everybody can copy your ID.
Right.
And if you don't grow fast enough, but there's more consumers asking for it, then you know the consumers are telling somebody else that this company is not growing fast, I want this product, so somebody else will do it. But to do everything on a global scale, you need a huge amount of people.
Right.
And that's where it gets very complicated, because if I have a perfect ID and I have a few very good customers and they know what I want, I know what they want and they know what I can serve, and they want it and more people want it, then I have to copy that into other people's minds.
Right.
And if I say, oh, I do this in China and the US and Brazil and it doesn't matter, and I hire people everywhere, you will end up with a big mess.
Right.
Because all those people, you don't hire them because they're not good, they don't want to work with you because they don't believe in the ID.
Right.
But if they don't have the same mindset about what is the product, what is the consumer offering, how should we do this service, how should we react to customer service, if they don't have all that feelings, then they will build another company in another country for you. And in the end, you have many different companies in different countries.
Right.
And it's not your company anymore.
So you're saying you should hire people where you are already and take them with you to new companies. So
Yeah.
if I was a US company coming to the Netherlands, I shouldn't necessarily just hire Dutch people. You're saying I should train some people in the US?
If you know that you're a US company and in 2 years you want to go to the Netherlands, it's good to start hiring the first Dutch people now, or to start identifying some US talents because you're a US company in your country now, in your company. You start educating those people, you start working with them, you help them, you let them feel a bit to learn more. And then you know those people and they know you and they know your product. And then you send the people that were with you in your home base for a few years, you send them to another country, and in that country they start hiring local people.
Right.
Because in the end you want to be a local company everywhere.
Right.
So if you looked at Booking when I left in 2011, we had, men and women were equal, and we had like 99 nationalities working in our office. Because we serve the world, and the world is 50-50, and the world is many nationalities. But it's not how it starts. It always starts with a small group of people having an ID, but then you have to spread it out.
Right.
And to spread it out takes very long, because I can talk 2 hours to you, but in the end you remember maybe 2 minutes of it, or maybe 1 minute, and I cannot transfer my mind to you. So that takes a long period of time, and people have to get used to that new ID.
Interesting. So it's almost like seeding your culture in a new office is quite important, I guess.
It's like planting many trees.
It's really interesting.
And it doesn't matter how much you look at the tree, it's not growing faster.
Right, right.
You have to take care of it, but it's not growing faster if you look more.
Yeah,
it takes
yeah.
time.
Right, interesting. Because I think that's a common mistake, though. A lot of companies, you see them go into a market, only hire local people, grow the team, and then realize, whoop, this is a different company on the other side of the world all of a sudden. And they don't know how to talk. It's not the same language almost within the company. It's really
I think it's a very old-fashioned discussion, make or buy. You know, do I do everything organic myself, or do I buy a lot of companies and put them together?
Yeah.
The same is with how you build your people. And what I think I see in the world is that companies that are very, I would say that they have their own identity and they're very organically building their own business step by step into the world,
Right.
that in the end they have more chance of success than the ones that just buying everything together or just hiring a lot of people, put them in one group.
Right.
Because they enter in very difficult situations later when they are big.
Right, right. Interesting. I wanted to ask you something about this thing that's going around since you've been at Uber, you know, you've been around. There's this common thing that people do when they're trying to relay their ideas, and they say something like, it's Uber for X, or it's Airbnb for this, and they copy that business model because it's so easy to explain, right? And they're like, yeah, we're going to go to every city ever, like, and deliver pizza and like the Uber style. Is that a wise way to do business, or should you copy business models like Uber for X, or should you, I guess, invent your own or shuffle them? How do you think Uber for X is dangerous, I guess is my
So I think you asked two different questions, and there are two answers to this. I think if you want to build a company and you need investors, you want to get some money from the market.
Right.
And to explain what you do, it's very nice to say to those potential investors, you know, I'm Uber for this, or I'm Airbnb for that, I'm the booking for this, so that people get an idea. It's a little bit about this kind of thing. The other side, if you build your company and you're just copying other people, for me, that's a recipe to failure.
Right.
I think everybody always should build his own company with his own customers, his own products, his own people. And you can only do it the right way to do it your way.
Right.
Of course, you can look at other companies, what do they do, and can I use that kind of business models? But in the end, if you implement it in your company, it will be different again.
Right.
So it's two sides of the medal. You know, how to explain it externally, it's nice to compare. How to get some ideas, it's nice to look at certain things. But if you want to build a killer app or the killer company or the killer server, the website, doesn't matter. You have to do it yourself very organically, identity with your customers.
So I shouldn't launch Uber for cats, for example. It wouldn't be a wise decision.
You can, but in the end, you have to build your company. You have to make the software. You have to get the customers. You have to make money out of it. So
I love it. So you're doing something pretty significant in Europe to help change the model, I guess. Because here it's quite, as I understand, it's quite hard to start a company. Most people go to the US because it's hard to raise money here. So you've got something to announce today that might change the game a little bit. I think.
So I'm going to announce something now. I guess we're done.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's start a short movie, and then I'll tell you something about how I think we're going to change Europe.
Great. It'll slowly fade.
EQT Ventures, a new venture fund for Europe. When I was building my companies like Booking, it was so hard in Europe to get money for that. You know, in the end, Booking was built without funding. And if you compare that to the US, it's unbelievable how difficult it was for us to do something. So, like I said before, in 10 and 11, I was a lot in the Valley to see how they do it, how the venture capital works there. And I was very annoyed, you know, that those guys have access of money, they have all the knowledge, because all the guys that build companies and the girls, they are there and they know it. And if we have good entrepreneurs in Europe and they want to build a company, then in the end, because the money they leave to the US, they make the money there, but they live there, build a family, and they stay there. So in the end, we have no money in Europe, we have no experience in Europe. And I think, like I said, you know, we have 25% of the economy of the world is in Europe. I think our innovation, the number of innovations we do, is better than in most countries of the world, especially also the US. So it's very strange that the US has 5 times more money in venture capital than Europe. And I was in Silicon Valley in 2010 and talking to Hjalmar, the middle guy in this thing, and it was funny. We started complaining about this. And after 10 minutes, we said, oh, wait a minute. If you complain about something, it means you have a pain, something is not right. So what is not right? So we started talking about it for 3 years, more or less. And during 3 years, we said, how can we change Europe? Because in Europe, we have so many good startups, so many good young entrepreneurs, and they need access to capital, and they need access to people. So we started talking about that, and we said we should raise a venture capital fund that's not just a traditional fund, because we see a consumer pain in Europe, and we are disruptors, so we will change this world. So we started raising money with big investors. That's only like a year ago. But we also said, I'm 50 years old, Jalmar is close to 50. We know how to build companies. Maybe we don't do it again. But we are also a little bit old, so we need to find a third guy who's much younger. So we found Lars. Lars worked for 6 years in King. He has been one of the key persons there to go to the Facebook games, to go to social games. And his team developed Candy Crush Saga, and you all know what it means. So with us as a team, a year ago, we registered as a new venture capital fund for Europe. And you have to register with the government, so you can go out and you can go to very big companies like pension funds and say, I want to build a new fund, I need capital. When we did that, people said, you are crazy, because nobody in Europe wants to pay money for this, nobody wants to invest. You are a first-time fund, you guys build companies, you're operators, you don't know how to invest, so you will not get money. And you are a first-time team, so nobody believes in first-time team, so this will be a very small thing and it will not work for Europe. But as my title says, big bets, big wins, we said, no, that's not going to happen. We are going to build a venture capital fund and we are going to change Europe. So we thought we raised some money. People told us it will take 2 years. Last year, in June, we started raising money. Wrong timing, because all those big investment companies go on holiday, so we started again in September. And yesterday, we closed with a very big amount for a new venture capital fund. 10% of this money is coming from mentors. And mentors, what are mentors? It's almost like 40 people in our fund who are mentors. They are entrepreneurs in Europe that build nice, innovative companies. So they know how to build those companies. Because part of creating this system is to create the environment, to create, the society where people help each other, people share knowledge. So we don't only have money, we also have people with experience. So our team is a lot of people, we have mentors in it, and I'll show you a bit later what it exactly means. We don't really look at one sector, because we think in the end, every sector that's not driven by software or by technology will be disrupted. The key word here is timing. So we cannot say we take this sector because we are too early for this sector, or we take that sector because maybe we are too late for that sector. So we will look at every sector, what is there, and if we meet very good young entrepreneurs with good ideas that already prove that it will work, they can come to us and we will help them to invest in the company, but also to give them advice. What do? We have a multi-stage fund, because most funds are only for seed, most are only for A, or they are only for very big tickets or for middle tickets. But we think, if you are a company going out of the seed phase and you have something that works, you want to scale it, you need access to the capital and the knowledge. And then if you grow very fast, you also need very fast a lot of money to grow it big until you can reach all the big investors. So this is the kind of things we do, from small to medium-sized tickets. We are half a VC, half a startup. It is because, next to Jalmar, Lars, and me, we have more people, 22 at the moment, we grow to 30, and all these kind of people have been working in startups, in all kind of companies out of Europe. They all have the experience for 1 year, for 2 years, some of them even for 10 years. What do you go through if you build a new company? So we can not only help you with getting access to capital, we also can help you with getting the knowledge, because building a company is not black and white and not that easy. You'll encounter a lot of problems you can't solve. We solve them not because we knew it, because we worked on it, and we can help you to find the right way to solve your problems. The team is much bigger. We will have even more people, and with these people, we want to help you. There is one person in our team, we call it a mother brain, and the mother brain has a lot of data going in from all sources. We follow 500,000 companies in the world, and in the end we say, with artificial intelligence, these kind of companies have these kind of competitors, and these are the trends we see there. We invested already in 5 companies, and if you guys think that we should look at you, upload your company on our website. We have a big team, we have a good infrastructure already, and maybe you are the 6th company in this. So this is the VC we wish we had ourselves. Thank you.